Great stuff. And Tom Dillman will be very diplomatic about receiving driving tips from the team boss, James Barclay. Well, the car's already heading out with Graham and James Dodd's E-Type on pole. This is going to be an E-Type fest, so stand by for action. Well, here we are, our fabulous field of Jaguar E-Types. Graham Dodd leading the field, James Thorpe in the Old English white car on the outside. We are getting ready to go racing here at Silverstone. 50 minutes of the Jaguar Fest, that is the Big Cat Challenge, Motor Racing Legends Big Cat Challenge trophy. And immediately, James Thorpe, taking it easy, jumps into the lead ahead of the green E-Type of Graham Dodd. John Pearson starting third. He's driving with Gary Pearson, but Gary Pearson starts fifth because he's driving with Alex Brundle. So Gary Pearson will drive two E-Types in the race. He's starting one, John Pearson starting the other, and John Spears and Lee Mole also starting drivers in the top half dozen. We're going to have to pick the bones out of this as we get a little bit more clarity as they head down the Wellington Straight, though. It is the white car of James Thorpe, or it was the white car of James Thorpe that had the lead, Alistair. It's going to be tough to pick out which E-Type is which, though.
It's Gary Pearson who's taken the lead from fifth on the grid. Gary driving this car first, as you mentioned, handing over to Alex, and he'll jump into the other car that's started by his brother John. But Gary takes the lead early on, and James Thorpe, yeah, that's impressive, isn't it? He said, "Oh, take it easy," but here he is in second place, ahead of a lot of illustrious names in similar cars.
I think one of the key things is that it's a rolling start rather than a standing start, which obviously protects the clutches and transmissions of more vulnerable older cars, so that's a good thing. Oh dear, and we've got a car off at the side of the track. That's a fixed head.
That's the car number 5.
Yeah, and slow
Paul.
car number 8 as well. That's Clara Rettenmeier, started last on the grid. So the rolling start helps James Thorpe because he's not suddenly being engulfed by cars that are much more used to starting from behind. And also it gives him a clear run into the first corner, and everybody's at roughly the same speed. And of course, when you're in the collect here, and then I'm just going to take it easy, when you're on the track, no, you're not coming by. Coming up behind him now is the pole car, Graham Dodd, and on the inside of that, that's the other Pearson's car. So that's John Pearson trying to slip through on the inside in 27. Number 4, that is Richard Kent, who shares with Joe Osborne, and Clara Rettenmeier not moving. Don't tell me we're going to have a second safety car in the early part of this race as well.
I think that looked to be off the track somewhere. I didn't spot exactly. Oh no, it isn't.
It's at Cops.
Completely wrong there.
And that is not moving. She's working inside the car to try and get it going. They're half a lap away. She needs to be moving fairly soon, otherwise the race director is not going to have much choice but to throw the checker flag. The turquoise car you can see steaming down the inside, Andy Newell. He shares that car with owner and preparer Ria Sauter. And just behind with the pale blue noseband, a familiar registration, Cut 7 on car number 4, Richard Kent. Up the inside, down into the loop, he goes by Graham Dodd. Now most of these cars are race prepared standard E-Types. Cut 7 there you can see with the fixed head coupe 2+2 bodywork replaced by a plexiglass window. We've got some semi-lightweights and lightweights as well, and of course James Barclay, the boss of Jaguar's Formula E program, in that heritage car number 1, trying to keep his nose clean. That car very new to the racing track and just outside the top 12 at the moment. Not sure what Tom Dillman makes of this, because it's very unlike anything he races in the World Endurance Championship or as driver.
Currently Gary Pearson is first and second.
Yes.
So he's going to be, if it finishes like this, he'll have to leap between podiums.
Straddling the podium like a behemoth. Yes, he is.
So John Pearson, Gary's brother, has started the car that Gary will take over. That's moved up into second place on the run between the loop and down to Brooklands. So a little bit of a shuffle of the order. And we also saw Danny Winstanley, that car number 78, the white car with the blue and red stripes. Danny Winstanley, ex-Caterham racer, been racing this E-Type now for 3 or 4 years, and is another potential contender for the top step of the podium. And also in shot there, Richard Kent's very famous registration you mentioned, Cut 7, which was raced in period by Dick Prothero.
James Barclay having a nice early run out in that E-Type. Now, that is a full lightweight E-Type, so it'll have the standard steel tub, and the rest of the body panelling will be. Imagine how many panels go into an E-Type bonnet. You can imagine just how much aluminium work needs to be done to make it work straight as well. It's a beautiful looking thing. Enzo Ferrari described the E-Type as the world's most beautiful car, and as with many things, not sure you can argue too much with that. So Gary Pearson leading from, or is it the other way around? John Pearson leading from Gary Pearson.
No, Gary leading.
Gary leading from John, there you go. And cut 7 with that pale blue noseband, car number 4. Richard Kent up to 3rd place. Joe Osborne will take that car over. That's a very formidable driver combination. And in 4th place, Danny Winstanley. Up, change for 2nd.
Did you see John Pearson just lift his hand there, saying to Richard Kent, "Yep, you go through on the inside. I'm not going to chop across you. This is really not. It's not exactly you go ahead of me, please." But a problem there for the pole position car, number 21, Graham Dodd, who has slowed. What a shame, Graham and James Dodd, another potential winning combination.
Yeah, that is a real shame. Well, certainly we saw Clara Rettenmeier stationary a lap or so ago. She has got going, and I think she managed to make it off track somewhere. She hasn't gone by, so she has not completed the lap, but that means that the safety car that perhaps hovered over us didn't come out, and now racing continues. Battle for 3rd place. 27, the Pearson's Jag, the other Pearson's Jag, not that Pearson's Jag, and Danny Winstanley, the white car with the red and blue stripes. Again, that's more white than Old English white, which is a more traditional production colour. But chasing the lightweight car in front. Now, the way that the cars were designed, again, or were raced in period, evolved from standard cars, which would have probably had all the trim, plus radio and everything else in, and gradually getting stripped out to make them lighter, to make up for the fact that they were often racing against sort of almost purpose-built race cars like 250 Ferraris. And then the semi-lightweight developed by the factory, and then the full lightweight car developed by the factory. But a challenge for the lead here down the inside comes Richard Kent, or round the outside come Richard Kent. Not going to quite make it there, and so staying in front still Gary Pearson, and Kent pushing hard from behind. Hands out of the cockpit from our drivers, and that's where Graham Dodd has come to a halt. And this is one of the most awkward positions. Almost every safety car we had yesterday was because a car had stopped by the pit wall in the wing. Now, drivers don't do that on purpose, but it does almost inevitably bring out a safety car because there are no cranes there. You can't just lift the car out of the way. Somebody has to come in a truck and drive down the straight and then hoist it or drag it. So that is the safety car scrambled. Luckily, in this 2-driver race, we have got plenty of time on the clock. So unlike the Formula Junior, it shouldn't really put too much of a stymie on anything. Been quite a number of changes to the programme from the beginning of qualifying. So if you're sitting in the grandstands at the moment and you've got your race card, I'll just bring you up to speed with those. Car number 1, James Barclay, as we look at the XK150, car number 150. James Barclay joined by Tom Dillman in the E-Type lightweight, the first of the continuation cars. Car number 18, John Clark, joined by Alistair McCaig. Alistair with a D, McCaig in their fixed head E-Type, car number 18, and that's a blue E. Ria Sorter in the turquoise car, joined by Andy Newell, Newall. And Gregor Fiskin was due to be co-driven by Christoph Cowens, was co-driven, or will be co-driven instead by Sam Hancock. No tub of lard required to get Hancock into an E-Type. Guy Zeiser, car number 77. Gregor Fiskin, by the way, car number 62. Guy Zeiser, 77. His E-Type being co-driven by Oliver Webb. Rick Wilmot, car number 84, his car not silver but white. And in 134, Christopher Sholey, joined by Rob Newell, Newall. And I think those were the changes that we had to our entry list. So the safety car has picked up a number of Pearsons, with a Kent in between. So the field will close up. And there are a variety of different classes here. Class A, B, C, D, E and F for various different eras, starting with the XK 120s, 140s and 150s, then Jaguar saloons, so you're thinking Mark II, because I don't think anybody races a Mark 7 or an 8 or a Mark 10. And then we get into the C-types, D-types and so on, which we don't have in this category, but the predominant class here will be Class D, E and F, which are for E-types, semi-lightweights and full lightweights. Car number 20 on your big screens, Chris Keith Lucas and Kerry Wilson's XK 120 Roadster, and then the Dayglow Landy. And this has done almost as many laps as some of our drivers and has been it's like when you're a sailor lost at sea and you see the lifeboat coming. These guys are feeling exactly that. By the way, guys, Ed Foster's Rangy has got a nail in the tyre, so if you can pop round and fix that as well, that would be quite handy. And while we have got a gap in proceedings, if there is anybody here who has got the equipment that could plug a tyre, it's a very tiny hole and it does need fixing, because his journey tonight is to get him back to Scotland. There's Phil Keane getting ready to take over from, who's he showing with, John Minshaw?
Yes, I think he is he?
Yeah, no, almost inevitably. That's like saying that day follows night. Is it saying Phil Keane is with John Minshaw? They've got a car in this race?
Lee Mole, actually, in this
Oh, he's sharing with Lee Mole? Oh,
yes.
right, okay.
He is sharing with John in two later races
yes.
in the Endurance Legends, but in this one he's with former British GT driver Lee Mole.
While it's quiet as well, I'm just going to point you in the direction of something that I wasn't aware was happening. Yokohama Tyres, who are part of the infield area, they've got a stand there. You see Nigel Greensill in the open face helmet this morning. Yokohama Tyres have got a stand with all sorts of information about tyres and so on. And of course, also you will note that there is a Team GB bobsleigh, because of course you have one in the middle of the summer at the Historic Racing. Team GB driver Nikki McSweeney is at the Yokohama stand with her bobsleigh. So if you have never seen a competitive bobsleigh monobob and you want to see one, try one, sit in it and find out just how much they're built for speed and absolutely not for comfort, join Nikki McSweeney at the Yokohama stand. I'm finding it hard as well myself to imagine quite what the combination of Yokohama, Silverstone Festival and bobsleigh, in what fervent imagination that came together, but fantastic to see her here. So join Nikki and find out a bit more about bobsledding, and if you fancy terrifying yourself in the depths of winter, I'm sure she'll tell you how you can get involved.
I had a similar problem working out how you connect Martin Haven with a skeleton bob over breakfast chat yesterday morning, but apparently it happened.
Oh yeah, it does happen, yeah. Cresta Run, it's for everybody, unless you're female, I'm afraid, because they only let women onto the Cresta once a year. They're still allowed to do things like that in Switzerland.
Going back to the Jaguars as they complete they're at Copse Corner now, so not too far, and I think we've seen the Dodd E-Type unfortunately towed away by our Land Rover, so they will be restarting, one hopes, this time around. But quick mention for the very first winner in an E-Type was our very own Graham Hill, twice world champion, father of Damon of course, who himself was world champion, Graham Hill took the very first race win in an E-Type, which would have been a much more standard car, probably straight from the showroom in those days. Maybe take the door cards out, and that was about it.
Well, I think possibly even not take the door cards out. I mean, of course, the famous story of Sterling Moss when he was in the Rob Walker 250, winning the Goodwood, winning a Goodwood, listening to commentator Raymond Baxter on the radio in the car, because it still had a radio as well as everything else that it came from the. I mean, in those days, whisper it, Ferraris came with the radio. It wasn't an optional extra. Hello, Mercedes, we're looking at you. So, yeah, I mean, it would have been an absolutely standard car. And, of course, the first unofficial race in an E-Type was Norman Dewis getting to the motor show overnight to try and get another car there for the journalists to drive. Right, safety car back in. We are ready to go racing once more. back under green flag racing, and the Jaguar E-Type swarming across the line. It is Gary Pearson who leads the field. It is John Pearson who leads. Mike Pearson's son. No, it is Gary Pearson in the car he shares with Alex Brundle. In second place, the man who was angling for the lead before the safety car came out, Richard Kent in cut 7, and then a battle for third place. That is John Pearson in car number 27, and alongside him, 78, Danny Winstanley. Winstanley not quite able to squeeze through. And is that still James Thorpe in 5th place? It is James Thorpe, who started on the outside of the front row of the grid because that's where Phil Quaife qualified the car. James Thorpe was a little bit nonplussed about starting the car, and I'll just let the quick guys go. He hasn't let the quick guys go very far, has he? And of course, part of his stint has been absorbed by the safety car. We do have a driver change and a pit stop window, mandatory pit stop for all of these cars, whether you're changing driver or hogging the steering wheel all to yourself. Little mistake there from cut 7 sees the Pearson 1-2 re-established as John Pearson goes through.
And very simple, the pit stop is, pit window is open 15 minutes, it's just opened, so open for another 14 minutes or so. Every car stops for 60 seconds stationary in the pit lane, plus 20 or so seconds to get in and out, so about an 80-second loss of time.
Green flag's been waved all the way around the circuit. Again, great thanks to all of the heroes in orange, the marshals, and black and orange as well, the marshals. And the pit window open, our first major pit caller. So this is John Spears handing over to Nigel Greensall. This car started 4th on the grid, this green lightweight. And Nigel not driving 2 cars in this race. He's driving in most of the races, and in one of our races today, because he's not driving in any of the single-seater races, because you don't share single-seaters, he's driving 2 cars in one race as well. So just making sure that he's around and about, you know. Pot hunting on an industrial scale is Nigel Greensall. So the race leader still is the 23 car of Gary Pearson. He'll hand over to Alex Brundle. 111 driver change there. Graham Bryant handing over to son Ollie. Ollie Bryant again has had some fairly enterprising outings yesterday. So the John Pearson driven and Gary Pearson taking over E-Type 27 is in second place, just ahead of Richard Kent and Joe Osborne's car. Now there you can see a trio of open-throated Webbers, 1 choke per cylinder on the number 28 E-Type. That car, Miles Poulton, sharing with Peter Fisk, and looks like they've got a bit of a leak. There seems to be quite a lot of liquid around the carburettor area where maybe you would not necessarily want it.
This trio of cars chasing after Gary Pearson in the lead as they come down the Wellington Straight towards the left-hander at Brooklands, and John Pearson jinks out to the Gary's left, and actually a little bit of a locked brake there, but the 2 Pearson brothers side by side, and they know they can absolutely trust each other, and in fact Gary's going to take the lead back again.
Now then, I wonder what their plan is, whether they're going to come in together or whether Gary will hand over to Alex Brundle first, or whether, he will have to, won't he? And then John can come in, because then Gary will be in the pit lane. So they may come in together, or they might do it a lap staggered. So that's going to be interesting. Richard Kent up to second place in car number 4, cut 7. And there you can see one of our saloons racing. We've got a couple of Mark IIs in the race. Just being
the Whale family car, I think it was, that they're about to lap.
Yeah, it was due to be started by Harry Whale, but Dad Nick Whale has started the car. Harry Whale will co-drive, and through goes Richard Kent, and then there's a bit of an embouteillage right behind him. So sneaking through in 78, Danny Winstanley. That will make him in 4th place, and 6th behind him still James Quaife. If you'd said to James Quaife, give us a £5 and you won't be out of the top 6 by the pit stop, I think he might have given you a tenner. And then James Thorpe, rather, not James Quaife, James Thorpe and Phil Quaife. Easy mistake to make, especially when you're a fool like me.
Danny Winstanley there just tipping the curb as he goes through and just takes a tighter line now, sliding the car out through club corner. Very, very sideways from Gary Pearson. Very sideways.
A little bit too much there. James Barclay, by the way, the boss of Jaguar's Formula E team, is on the back of that queue behind the turquoise car, now up into the top 10. He was 12th behind the safety car, or early on before the safety car, now up into the top 10, so really dialing himself in. I don't know how much race driving James Barclay has done, but probably not an awful lot in that car anyway. And that's a nice start to the day. He's right up behind Andy Newell, who's in the turquoise car, and so looking to make a position, and he will then hand over to ace driver Tom Dillman.
So none of the leading cars chose to come in. I did think Gary Pearson would perhaps come in early because from the two of them, Alex Brundle is the quicker driver, and as you've said, Gary has to come in before John so that he's ready to take over John's car. But he didn't. He's done another lap, so they obviously have a plan.
The cunning plan. Maybe he's going to double bluff, make John come in first, and then hang around. Okay, almost everybody in now. You saw cut 7 go in. Richard Kent from second place. Danny Winstanley follows him in. Okay, so the Pearson-Brundle car really, in theory, should be the first of that pair to stop, because Alex Brundle has got nothing else to do. But Gary Pearson will want to be waiting when brother John comes into the pit lane to hand over to him.
And into the number 4 car, Richard Kent gets out, the car's owner, and Joe Osborne, a McLaren works driver, gets into the car. Joe Osborne, regular feature of British GT a few years ago, not been competing regularly, been racing overseas in Europe for McLaren. And here is the 23 Pearson to Brundle handover. So Alex Brundle now in the car, which came in from the lead.
Yeah. Well, not unfamiliar with Jags. His dad Martin's got an E-Type as well. And Alex racing the car yesterday, so that was the leader. This is now the leader. In fact, no, that's a change of position. Barclay has gone by Newell. Oh, you can see why, can't you? That's a big handful. Andy Newell's car, James Barclay, car number 1, chasing the Adams car, and then Thorpe, and in front is still John Pearson.
Andy Newell does like to drive any car he's in sideways.
That seemed to be rather too much looking through the side windows. It's a good outing from James Barclay. Very impressed with that indeed. Drives a good race, clearly, as well as running a good race. And there is the number 4 machine, cut 7. So these are the cars that came in from second, third, or from first, second and third, but they're in sort of reversed order now, because the 23 E-Type was the leader coming in, and it was ahead of car number 4, and that was ahead of car number 78, but they're all jockeying for position, and right behind them is the car of Phil Quaife now, I think, as well. 30, oh no, that hasn't stopped yet, so that's a different white E-Type, as they go by the XK150 car number 150. That's Claire Keith Lucas and Andrew Keith Lucas. Claire started, not sure if that car has stopped yet. Yes, it has, it's on its out lap, so Andrew Keith Lucas driving the XK150.
And Alex Brundle there did get ahead of cut 7. He's got back ahead now, but he took the wrong side when lapping the slower car and lost out, but he's got back through again now. But it's Danny Winstanley who's driving solo, as he always does, in his E-Type, and he has taken, as you said, he's jumped forward after that pit stop a couple of places. But we won't know the true order until all of the pit stops of the leading cars have washed through. Right,
James Thorpe and Phil Quaife now in the pit lane from second place. That was the car that started in second as well. James Thorpe, hopefully he's enjoyed the delights of starting the race, because he did a pretty decent job. Here he is. Oh, there they are. James walks away, Phil Quaife with the rest of the race in front of him. So he'll have around 25 minutes of racing still to deal with when he heads out to the pit lane. Alex Brundle, car number 23, just at the moment hanging on in front of number 4 car of Joe Osborne. car number 4. We keep calling it Cut 7 because that's the registration on the car. It was used in period by racing driver Dick Prothero on a number of cars, in the same way that everybody else transferred their registration from their current car to their next car, so he did too.
And at the back of this group, we mentioned them once, I think, the number 57 Jonathan Mitchell car. Jonathan Mitchell, experienced historic racer, more familiar perhaps with the 2-litre sports cars, the Chevrons and Lolas, but he's been racing this E-Type a few years now, and he's latched on to the back of that group. And I think, has Mitchell done his pit stop?
Yes, he has.
He has,
so
right. That's genuine position.
Yeah, number 57, so he has jumped up to catch those guys. Started in 9th place. So these are the front cars that stopped early. So Danny Winstanley coming down the Hangar Straight, car number 78. Alex Brundle now closing right in behind him in the number 23, the dark blue E-Type. So dark blue it's almost black. Is that midnight blue? I'm not quite sure what Jaguar colour that is, but he's all over the back of car number 78. And again, you can see the various different Jaguar body shapes here. You've got the fixed head coupe that leads that group, and Cut 7, the similar shape with a sort of long rear end. And then most of these cars will be a roadster, but with a hard top rather than a canvas top. There are a couple of cars in the race that do have a old-fashioned style convertible top, but the hard top is definitely a little bit more resilient and possibly a bit more aerodynamic as well. So still the race leader is car number 27, John Pearson. Obviously he's giving Gary a couple of laps in the pits to have a breather and a cuppa maybe, and who knows, maybe a wagon wheel even before he heads back out. And the Thorpe Quaife car number 34, Phil Quaife now starting to just close a little bit up on these lead cars.
This is really starting to brew up, isn't it? You can almost feel the pressure rising as we wait for those last 2 or 3 cars it is in the lead group that we're owed a pit stop. But this will, I think, end up being the lead pack, with perhaps another couple of cars joining it after their pit stops. And they're absolutely tied together, aren't they? Danny Winstanley, Alex Brundle right behind, and then Jonathan Mitchell.
Brundle not content to be behind, is he? He's having a look everywhere. Jonathan Mitchell is as well in the second of the white cars as they come into Copse Corner. Brundle goes through.
Sorry, it's Phil Quaife. My apologies.
Yes, it is.
Identified him.
Yeah, so it's a sort of slightly light grey, greyish white. Where, you see there as Jonathan 78 Danny Winstanley got onto the brakes. The nose of the car just starting to dive under braking. These cars, even though they are racers, still fairly softly sprung compared to a modern race car. Soft springing, firm damping, that's the way to keep traction in the car with such narrow tyres. James Barkley, by the way, bringing the car into the pit lane to hand over to Tom Dillman in 3rd place. No pressure there for Tom Dillman. All right, half the cars in front had already stopped, but nevertheless, I'm sure it will go down in the briefing as in the top 3 when the car came in. Here's the race leader, John Pearson, brings the car in. And Gary Pearson has stopped and had a breather. Now then, car number 1 coming back in. I'm sure I saw that as in the pit before. Maybe it's not. So James Barkley, Tom Dillman in 2nd place as Jaguar's Formula E team boss comes into the pit lane. Run by Jaguar Heritage. This car, one of the first, the continuation E-Types. Car built at Brighton-on-Dunsmore in Jaguar's Special Vehicles Department, which is in the footprint of the original Peugeot Talbot works there. So James Barkley, little thumbs up. And I'm sure Tom Dillman, I'm going to catch up with him when we go racing in Fuji in a couple of weeks in the World Endurance Championship and find out exactly how an E-Type compares to a hypercar, because that's going to be an interesting combination of existences, isn't it? Formula E, hypercar and E-Type race. Formula E, E-Type, it's almost the same thing, surely. He's now racing in Formula E-Type as well as testing in Formula E. So Tom Dillman, car number 1. This is Gary Pearson then has taken over from John Pearson in car number 27. And he'll be very eager to get going. Where are the leaders? They are coming out of Luffield. Here they are. This is going to be close. He can't do more than 60 kilometres an hour in the pit lane, otherwise he'll have to come back in and sit on the naughty step. But that should be just enough for Gary Pearson to emerge in front of Alex Brundle.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, that is very close indeed. Now, Brundle is going to be straight into the attack. And don't forget, Brundle's already had 2 or 3 laps to get up to speed. Car number 23, the darker of these 2 cars. And Gary Pearson has been standing in the pit lane for 2 or 3 minutes, or 2 or 3 laps. Doesn't know what this car was like when it came in. So the advantage is with Brundle for the moment. But if he lets Gary Pearson settle down into car number 27. Yeah, go on, he's having to gesticulate. Go on, go on, go on. Get on with it, sir.
Gary first and second again now.
Yeah. So Phil Quaife third, Danny Winstanley fourth, and Joe Osborne in fifth. Nigel Green still up to sixth in car number 26 that John Spears started. And then in 7th place is Jonathan Mitchell, and 8th, Tom Dillman on his outlap.
So the car that started by John Pearson, now driven by Gary. The car started by Gary, now driven by Alex Brundle, and they're in 1st and 2nd places. But it's still a 4-car battle for the lead, with the 3rd place car, the number 34, the slightly sort of grey fixed head car of Phil Quaife, and then it's Danny Winstanley in the more traditional shaped E-Type behind the white car with the blue and red stripes, and they're all coming now into Village Corner, the right-hander which will lead up to the loop. And at the moment Alex Brundle is not challenging, he's not right there, and I think that gesticulation from the cockpit from Alex was saying, yeah, Gary, you go on, I'll not challenge you for the moment, because what they want to do is pull away from the 2 cars behind if they can.
Exactly so. Now, one car yet to stop is the white XK120 of Christopher Scoli and Rob Newell. So they need to make sure that in fact, they have missed the pit window completely. Meanwhile, battle for the lead, and Brundle does go through this time. So, okay, I now think I'm quicker, and again, this is the deal when you're in the slipstream of the car in front, even with all the power that you get from a full-fat E-Type XK motor. And through once more goes Gary Pearson. Car number 4, that's the Kenton Osborne car, and car number 23, that's the Pearson and Brundle car in 2nd, both under investigation for their pit stops. And 134, the white XK120, according to the timing screen, has not stopped at all. I think has completely forgotten, in the joy of twiddling an XK120 around Silverstone in the sunshine, that he had a co-driver and he probably ought to have popped into the pit lane. So I think Rob Newell started Christopher Scoli's car, so not quite sure what happened there. However, Gary Pearson leads, Alex Brundle in 2nd, and falling into the clutches of Phil Quaife in the... Is that off-white or sort of a very, very pale grey? It looks like a bit of a pale grey. Anyway, car number 34, Danny Winstanley, just off the podium at the moment, in 4th place in what is a white E-Type, the fixed head.
Coming into a club corner, and the 4 cars still very much tied together as they come through the right-handed element onto the Hamilton straight, and the E-Type leading across the line is the Gary Pearson car, but it's the one numbered 27. 23, which is his other car, driven by Alex Brundle, still in 2nd place. The easy to identify and not the same name as another car is Phil Quaife, Danny Winstanley, who drives solo, so he can't swap around in cars.
Not driven by any of the Pearson family. Is this like the Queen having 2 horses in the Derby?
I suppose it is.
I suppose it is, you know. The Pearsons just doubling their chances.
Not an uncommon sight to see them sharing cars across 2 cars in one race, as Nigel Greensill will be doing.
Just to catch up with the James Bartley Tom Dillman car, still in 8th place, and Tom Dillman bedding himself in 2:27.8 his last lap. 2:27.87, he is chasing the car in front, which is doing a 2:27.83, and that is car number 27, which is
57.
57 rather, which is Jonathan Mitchell, yeah. So the gap there is about 8 seconds, yeah, so quite a bit of real estate for Tom Dillman to try and close in that Jaguar Classic car. There it is. So again, Dillman, you know, there's not many inputs, I think, in that car that are similar to anything that he's driven. I was going to say recently, probably ever. I think as we heard from the man who started on the front row, James Thorpe, you sort of float the car around. You guide it and encourage it rather than wrestle it. I think these cars are fairly light and floaty, and you just need to ease it in the direction in which you would like it to go.
And into the pits, I'm afraid, from 7th place, the car you've just mentioned, Jonathan Mitchell, which will put the Jaguar Classic chassis number 1 of the continuations up into 7th place, which is an exceptional performance.
Yeah, really good stuff from them. That car actually started in 7th place, but worked his way up into 2nd by the time the pit stop, James Barclay. So that car up to 7th, and now the Mole and Keane car in 8th place. And what's the gap there? That's only 1.6 seconds actually. So Phil Keane, who took over from Lee Mole, chasing Tom Dillman. And Phil Keane does have a lot more experience in cars of this nature than Tom Dillman does. So that could be quite an entertaining battle for the Frenchman. See how he hangs on. Meanwhile, Phil Quaife in car number 34, still trying to chase down Alex Brundle. He gets sort of yay close and no closer, within a couple of car lengths, but not close enough really to have much of a stab.
Car number 134 has got a drive-through penalty for a late pit stop. I think you mentioned that he missed the pit window. Well, that penalty has come up now. Car number 134, which is the Christopher Scoley, Rob Newell car.
Let's see if he can find a pit lane to do a drive-through. We were talking about Nigel Greensall, as we saw him on the pit wall taking over from John Spears. That's him at the back of the shot. So that car closing in fast. Nigel Greensall just set the fastest race lap, 2:24.417, not just for that car, but for any car. And Greensall on another quicker lap again. Purple sector 1, faster than anybody else, and he is hoving in behind. So this could now really throw a spanner in the works for everybody else, because Greensall, with his tail up, closed onto the lead group now. He's right, almost within striking distance of Danny Winstanley, and there's still more than a dozen minutes left. So we're still going to get probably 6 laps out of this. So Nigel Greensall really charging and making up ground hand over fist.
Yeah, perfect description, hand over fist, because we saw on our fantastic live stream shots there as he came through Beckett's corner, Nigel working away very hard at the wheel to keep this car going in approximately the right direction. Approximate is fairly good description of how these cars drive, but the encouragement of the driver to perhaps, could you go slightly further to the right, thank you very much, and it's the skill of the drivers that keeps these cars on the straight and narrow.
You do have to nudge them through a bit, don't you? 134 has taken its drive-through, or at least they've made 2 pit stops, so we now had a driver change, and that drive-through has been served. Meanwhile, here is the battle. Tom Dillman just ahead of Phil Keane. Car number 1 ahead of car number 180, so the Jaguar Classic, car number 1, Tom Dillman at the wheel. And again, I don't think he's probably had steering with so little effect on the front wheels ever in the dry in any racing car. You put in an input, and in a modern race car you expect it to sort of stay there. The Jag meanders around in the general direction vaguely of where you would hope it to go. And Phil Keane all over the back of him, so Dillman with plenty to think about here in this Jag. Of course, it's not his, it's not actually James Barclay's either, but nevertheless, I'm sure that Jaguar Classic want to see it raced the way that they are hoping that all future owners of cars that they build will race them as well. After all, you don't build a racing car like that for somebody just to put it on a podium. Little hand in the cockpit from Tom. Been there, done that. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm just sort of learning what I'm doing. Change of lead. Alex Brundle goes through ahead of Gary Pearson, and right behind now is 34, in fact not quite right behind, a little bit of traffic there in the way. Gary Pearson going back in front of Brundle, but I think Gary possibly getting held up there out of Luffield onto the straight, and Brundle having to go by rather than both of them slowing down.
Great advert for Gary's preparation company, because he prepares both of these cars and probably others in this race as well. Pearson's Engineering, local company, very much a local family to Silverstone, and Alex Brundle, as you mentioned earlier, a very strong relationship with them as well. He's built cars there himself, really enjoys getting his hands dirty and working the spanners.
You say dirty? I mean, he can claim to have part built at least the Mustang, because it's got his blood on it. Because everybody who's ever worked on any old car, whether it's a pristine racing car or a real old rock box like mine, yeah, if you haven't bled on your car, you haven't worked on your car. Oh, huge moment for Nigel Greensell. Left rear wheel, right rear wheel rather, just onto the grass, and a 720. Well, that's a 9.1 from the Russian judge for that triple Salco and double toe loop, but unfortunately for Greensell, a chance at the podium has just gone begging, I think, backwards across the grass. Massive, massive moment. Fortunately, unlike perhaps somewhere like Goodwood, here on the Grand Prix circuit at Silverstone, there is a lot of acreage before you get to substantial things, so he survives that. And there's a change. Yeah, Phil Keane squeezing by Tom Dillman. So that is a change for 7th place. And now perhaps Tom, with a more experienced historic driver in front of him, will actually be able to learn a little bit more about the car by watching what's going on. So Gary Pearson leads Alex Brundle, Phil Quaife in 3rd place in the first of the lighter cars, ahead of Joe Osborne. And there you are. We talked about the roadsters with the hard tops as opposed to roadsters with the canvas hood, and there you can see 167, more standard looking car with that canvas hood erected, because there's much more turbulence with the roof down, as anybody who's got a convertible fully knows.
And Alex Brundle there, slightly caught behind that slower car, who couldn't just leap out of the way, as his father would say in Grand Prix commentary. You can't just disappear, but the slower car did keep well over to the right with the canvas hood that you mentioned. I did see a little bit of smoke coming from the 23 car. I'm not sure whether yes, there's smoke definitely from the left rear corner, and the exhaust comes out there, so I wonder whether there's a bit of an engine issue for the number 23, and certainly 34 Phil Quaife has closed right up, and similarly Gary Pearson in the other Pearson's car is pulling away.
Yeah, they're just going by the XK150, car number 150, the Keith Lucas family car. Gary Pearson is pulling away. Alex Brundle under pressure now from Phil Quaife. Danny Winstanley just off the podium at the moment in 4th place ahead of Joe Osborne. And then Nigel Greensell again, more fastest laps, but he's dropped 7 seconds behind Joe Osborne and Phil Kent's car. So actually Osborne, Greensell's last lap, the previous lap was a 2 minute 24, his last lap 2 minute 40.8. That's the big hole in performance that spin has punched. Cost him a good 20 seconds nearly in terms of time lost, not being at speed and gathering it all up and shaking his head and waggling his ears to make sure he's going in the right direction. So he is still in 6th position ahead of Phil Keane and Tom Dillman, but he has lost contact with this group.
And the 2nd placed car, there's a lot more smoke now coming out of the 23 Alex Brundle E-Type. It seems to be on the slower corners, although there's a bit there as well as he
I wonder if that is tyre rub.
I did wonder that earlier on, yes.
It is fairly constant. I'm looking hard at that left rear to see if it's sort of wobbling a bit. That's a lot of smoke. No, that's on the overrun. Well, if it's on the overrun, it's valve guides, which is less of an issue. What it will do is just, you know, foul the combustion chamber a tiny bit. So he might have an engine that doesn't feel as really crisp and on the button as it did at the start of the race. That should not be a terminal issue. If it's a wheel, then I think he'll be feeling all of that.
no doubt with all his experience, Gary Pearson is looking in his mirrors at his own car with that bit of smoke.
It's not coming from the exhaust, is it? It's coming from further forward in the car. It's not coming out of the exhaust pipes. It does look like it's coming out from under the bonnet. But again, it does look like it's on the overrun.
So the coming through Beckett's, we'll see whether it comes again. Yes, a little bit more smoke there, but a tight shot on our live stream, so we didn't really see exactly where it was coming from. They're about to lap the Whale Family Mark II once again, but right up ahead, going into Stoke Corner, is Gary Pearson in the car number 27, the lead car. Then it's Alex Brundle. Yes, it is. It's ahead of the exhaust, isn't it? So it's blowing out from under the engine.
Yeah. But it does seem to be doing it on the overrun. So I wonder quite what sort of catch tank system or something they've got there. Maybe something there is blowing out, but less than ideal. 5 minutes for the engine to survive, and a Pearson family 1-2.
Doesn't seem to be slowing him too much, does it? Because
no, it doesn't, does it?
The third place car of Phil Quaife, close, but hasn't been able to dive by, and then slightly losing touch a little bit now, Danny Winstanley. He was right there the whole of the race, but he's losing touch as well. So whether he's got a little bit of an issue, maybe brakes is another area of the car that might be starting to suffer now as we run it into the last 4.5 minutes of the race.
Yeah, it's really starting to trail smoke. Of course, all of that will be going all over Phil Quaife's car and Danny Winstanley's car, so they'll be able to smell what it is, because engine oil smells different from brake fluid, smells different from transmission oil. And Phil Quaife thinking, I think I probably need to be going by here before I spin off on whatever's coming out of Brundle's car. And it is significantly more with every passing corner now coming out of Alex's car. Of course, now he's on the opposite side to where the smoke is coming from. There's no question, though, with the windows open, he'll be smelling all of that and will know exactly what's going on with the car. And clearly feels that it's still something he can press on with. Does Phil Quaife go through here? Looks like he has, up into second place. So the car that started second is in second. Alex Brundle comes back underneath him, though, heading down into Maggots and Beckett's. Blue flags waving. That's to warn you that there is a quicker car. Well, they both know where the quicker car is, because it can be either or both of them. Phil Quaife going through again underneath Alex Brundle. Into the final element of the Beckett's S's, out to Chapel Curve. Brundle's right there. He's got a very good run onto the straight. Drifts around the outside. He's really enjoying this, Alex Brundle. Maybe not the fact that the car is smoking. He's having to try and ignore that to keep the race alive. 2 minutes 50 seconds. That's more than a lap.
I think by the time the leader gets to the line, we will be onto the last lap, which is...
I don't know. 2 minutes 24. And 2 minutes 40, I don't think this will be the last lap. I think unless he can slow significantly, Gary Pearson, they will have to do one more after this. Now, that's great for them and great for everybody, unless your car is not very keen on going much further. And Alex Brundle's car, yeah, it is going to have to do another lap, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes.
After this one.
Yeah, it was so close when they got to the line. It was about a second in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're now counting down onto we're on the penultimate lap, which I did wonder if Gary knew there was a problem with his own car, he might just have backed off and gone across the line a little bit later, so it was the last lap, but not. So we have 1.5 laps to go as they go into the loop, and there's the smoke again, which when the car is on the hanger straight and we get that long shot on the screen, we can see that the smoke is coming from underneath the engine. It's blowing out under the engine.
Still pretty hazy even in the straight, isn't it? And then once you decelerate, something sloshes or moves and you get an awful lot more smoke coming out. I mean, that's a lot of oil smoke. It can't be leaking brakes, because Brundle would not be going this fast without 100% confidence in the brakes. Just wouldn't be able to, never mind would want to. Oh, and Phil Quaife on the inside, coming through Luffield, out through Woodcote and onto the pit straight, the old pit straight. Down the inside into Copse Corner. He's still side by side with Brundle, but Brundle goes through. He had the racing line. He's still got speed in the straight line. The car still stops, it still turns. It's not oversteering luridly in right-handers, which would suggest that whatever smoke there is, there's very little actual fluid in it. Because I mean, look, he turns here into the Beckett's S's, and it's got as much or as little grip as it would normally have.
And that's probably not past the notice of the stewards, because if it was blowing out oil and the car was sliding around, they'd be putting a flag out to bring him in, because the last thing they want is oil trailed all around the circuit. But Gary Pearson takes another slower car going into Stowe Corner. Now we've got the battle for second, with Alex Brundle in Gary's other car just ahead of Phil Quaife in third place. And Phil's managed to get alongside and even ahead a couple of times, but just hasn't been able to consolidate the position. Alex has always managed to squeak back through again as they go into Club Corner. They're coming round to start the last lap, and there might be a big sigh of relief in Alex Brundle's helmet.
Do you know what? Are they? They're not. Oh yes, they are now. Yes, sorry, no, they are now. Yes. Because it was within a second or two there of Gary Pearson. Again, if he had look at the screen on the E-Type of Phil Quaife, that's starting to haze over, isn't it? And you can see exactly why he's getting all of that. Yeah, Gary Pearson almost could have slowed down enough there. If he'd slowed down a second and backed all this up, then they might have potentially finished the race right then and there. But it was within a second or two. Alex Brundle coming up back onto the straight. By the way, since that lurid spin, Nigel Greensill circulating in around 2 minute 26, 2 minute 27, but he has dropped way back down the order, outside the top 20. He's in 24th place, ahead of the Whale Family Mark II. Quite a long way ahead of it, but only ahead of it on the road. And behind Gregor Fiskin, his E-Type that he shares with Sam Hancock.
I think Nigel's actually retired the car, because we've now had the Men at Work sign come up next to him. On
So he has, So it's pulled off somewhere. So whatever it was, I mean, he did have a wheel on the grass, but maybe it was something that happened in the spin. They're going by car number 75, the Matt Walton E-Type. Halfway round the final lap, Alex Brundle still hanging on from Phil Quaife in the battle for second place. And Gary Pearson leads. So the car that started third is first, the car that started in fifth place is second, and the car that started second is third. Danny Winstanley in fourth place from 10th on the grid.
And I think maybe Alex is just backing up a little bit because of, he's just not got the speed anymore. Phil Quaife can't get by, but it's slowing Phil down, and Danny's back in the mix again, isn't he?
Yeah.
He had lost quite a bit of ground a couple of laps ago, and a lot of traffic ahead of them, but coming down to complete the race, coming into Stowe for the last time.
Yeah, weaving their way through the traffic down the Hanger Straight, but it will be Gary Pearson, E-Type number 27, who comes down to the Vale for exit the Vale for the final time, alongside one of the cars that had trouble earlier on. It's car number 27, Gary Pearson, who will claim victory and second place. He drives car number 27 to victory. He started car number 23. Alex Brundle brings that across the line in second place, and the James Thorpe and Phil Quaife E-Type makes it a 1-2-3. Danny Winstanley just behind in fourth. Here comes cut 7 that Joe Osborne brings across the line in fifth place. Lee Mole and Phil Keane in sixth position in car number 180, and James Barclay and Tom Dillman in the Jaguar Classic car number 1, the continuation E-Type. They will finish in seventh place. That is a very good outing for a duo that patently have not raced together. One may have been on the pit wall on the radio and the other one in the car, but they've not raced together. And Dillman, he knows Silverstone, but not in an E-Type, so that's an impressive outing for that car. And again, a new build car, so pretty impressive stuff. Mark Donner will finish in 8th place, and then the Bryant family E ahead of Webb and Zeiser. Well, whatever it was that was blowing out of Gary Pearson and Alex Brundle's E-Type is, you can see the Thorpe and Quaife screen is completely hazed over. So Phil Quaife just having to put up with that, could not find a way through. Whatever it was, it didn't slow down Alex Brundle enough that even a driver of Phil Quaife's experience couldn't get by him. So the car making a lot of smoke and spitting out a fine mist of oil, but not enough to slow the car down significantly. So it is a 1-2 for the Pearson family. Gary Pearson starting off in car number 23, handing over to Alex Brundle, and then having a cup of tea and a bicket in the pit lane before John Pearson brought in the 27 car for Gary to take through to claim victory. And that, if you're going to drive two cars in one race, is the way to do it. So again, Gary Pearson will be first and second on the podium. It's going to be an interesting interview. So Alex pulls up behind him. Probably needs to complain to Gary about the fact that, oh, my car's smoking a lot. You broke it before you gave it to me. Gary will say, it's fine when I had it. I left it in good nick. Yeah. So Gary has seen exactly what was happening in his mirrors.
Yeah, so I picked up an oil leak. I can see it, I can tell you when you brake it. For the first time I saw it, I thought, oh, you locked a wheel.
There you go. Gary Pearson thinking exactly what we were thinking as we watched the smoking car behind him that he had vacated. Perfectly fine when he left it in Alex Brundle's tender mercies, and something else happened. But they claim a 1-2 finish. The Thorpe and Quaife car that started on the outside the front row of the grid. James Thorpe, I think, underplayed his hopes for that, and they ended up with a podium. That's a great result for them. Danny Winstanley finishing fourth, and all sorts of starry names further down the list. Grand Prix ace Mark Hales, three-time World Touring Car Champion Andy Prio in there as well. And unfortunately for John Spears and Nigel Greensall, they did not make it through into what potentially could have been the podium battle. So a great race in the Big Cat Challenge. An early safety car compressed the field back up, but they hadn't really split up by that stage. The early race leader, Gary Pearson, in car number 23 that he was sharing with Alex Brundle. And then after the pit stops, Gary Pearson taking over the number 27 car, started by John Pearson. He would lead the race from Alex Brundle. And then as the number 23 Brundle car started to develop a bit of an oil leak, that dropped away from the lead group. A pair of them had swapped the lead early on. The smoke started to come out of car number 23, dropped back into the clutches of the E-type of James Thorpe and Phil Quaife. Lurid spin for Nigel Greensall in the car he took over John Spears, dropped them out of the top half dozen. The car would eventually retire, and the smoking Brundle managed to hold off Phil Quaife all the way to the line. Quaife third, Brundle second, but Gary Pearson first and second in the two E-types 27 and 23.